On paper, the Clippers are a super team. Kawhi Leonard, 5 All-NBA appearances. Paul George, 6-time All-NBA. James Harden, 7 All-NBA selections. They can all handle the ball and shoot. And Kawhi and PG have made 11 all-defensive teams in an era when versatile defensive wings are in demand. So, with all that talent, why is their offense below league average? And more importantly, why are they losing more than half their games? Assembling super teams is nothing new. The first unofficial super team was the 1969 Lakers, when Wilt Chamberlain paired up with Elgin Baylor and Jerry West. They did make it back to the finals, but lost in disappointing fashion to Bill Russell's Celtics. Over the years, other teams have stacked all-stars in trades or free agency, and with mixed results. Some super teams win championships, like the 1983 76ers, the 2017 Warriors, they were pretty good, and the LeBron-Wade Heatles, although Miami failed to reach their lofty expectations in year one.
Not 5, not 6.
Some super teams are so unremarkable, they almost lose super team status with 2020 hindsight. And then there are teams that almost work, but the expectations were so high they feel like letdowns. The 1997 Rockets added a third Hall of Famer a year removed from a title, and while they didn't dominate the league, they nearly made the NBA Finals. The 2004 Lakers fielded a quartet of Hall of Famers, and again, they fell short, but at least they were favorites in the final round of the playoffs. The current quartet of Hall of Famers in LA might not win a playoff series at this rate, and while age is often a factor that inflates expectations for super teams, there is a ton more going on here. The Clippers run a lot of plays designed for isolation post-ups for their star wings that almost look like they're from the 1990s. And while some of this iso ball works because Kawhi and PG are so skilled, it's not the most efficient team offense, and it also turns the other stars into overly qualified spot-up shooters. Notice how slow some of these sets are to develop. Harden's not looking to score here, but to hit Kawhi off this screen. Then they fall back on some isolation while 2 other Clippers clog up the paint. It's all very 2004. Harden's not really comfortable attacking from the elbow like this, so he's in all-out pass mode on these plays, waiting for something to develop. And when nothing does, he throws a hot potato to Westbrook, who's open for a reason. According to synergy tracking, LA is at the top of the league in number of isolation possessions, and many are by design. This is after a timeout where a contested mid-ranger is not ideal. This one looks like it's in slow motion. There's some confusion, followed by a pick to generate a switch, but Nikola Jokic can stand in the lane because 2 Clippers are jammed together in the corner, so a single defender can cover them, and the primary attack here is Kawhi-solation with 6 seconds left on the clock, which actually yields a pretty good shot. And that's the promise of this Clipper team. Defenses have to double team because there's so much scoring talent. Kawhi brings it up and draws 2 defenders here, Harden skips it across court, and George ends up with a corner 3. But they don't always capitalize when they draw a second defender. Off this screen, Harden draws 2, but they lose the advantage on the pass because James thinks that Kawhi's popping out to the line, but he sort of rolls instead, and then Kawhi goes to work in isolation, draws that help defender, but in lieu of hitting Harden, he throws up a long 2. Sometimes Kawhi will make that pass, but then the shooters won't shoot. George is wide open, gets way too cute, and the moment is gone. And I'm not actually sure I've ever seen a team create so many advantages only to lose the advantage a second later. Sometimes the spot-up shooter sort of record scratches. Terrence Mann is wide open here but passes instead, so Norm Powell attacks a closeout, but then his pass is off the mark, and that lets the defense mostly recover. So sometimes this is also a passing issue. Kawhi draws the double, and the big man is open at the rim. But Leonard misses it. The skip pass is open, but it resets back to Harden, who's floated 35 feet out for some reason, and when it gets to George, the advantage is gone, and at least he can attack a bunch of space and hit pay dirt late in the clock. Kawhi backs down on this one, and when the double team comes, Harden's spaced too far away, and that means one defender can cover two Clippers. Kawhi misreads it, and that leads to a turnover. A few minutes later, it's the same setup. Harden's in better position this time, but Kawhi's worried about that pass now, needs to dribble to find an outlet, and that leads to a wide open PG, but he doesn't shoot for some reason, and then Man isn't even in position to shoot on the catch, so the advantage goes away, and Harden ends up with a difficult shot. Man has had his issues in these situations, capitalizing on his teammates' attention, deciding whether to shoot or drive, although Harden has probably killed more advantages than anyone. Man attacks the closeout, and then instead of shooting, Harden lets Jabari Smith close all the way back to him so the defense can completely reset while he plays footsie in the corner. This time it's George working in space, so the defense sends a second defender to help, and Harden isn't even thinking of shooting and lets the Spurs recover again before moving into the pick and roll game. And this one might take the cake, where he runs to the line just to wait for the defender to catch up to him, only so he can throw it over to Ian Eagle on press row.
I got it. Unbelievable.
This is part of the challenge of Harden playing away from the ball. He's historically only a touch better on catch and shoot threes than on off the dribble ones, and he doesn't attack closeouts well. He's not going to explode into space and finish in traffic, and so he turns it into a tough mid-ranger instead. That means that defenses don't have to pay much attention to him when he doesn't have the ball. So his man can sit in Kawhi's driving lane while he's one pass away, and he ends up looking to the other side and throws it to a defender. As strange as it sounds, the Clippers would be better in spot-up situations with an elite shooter or someone who attacked closeouts with more explosiveness. But hold on.
There's a flip side to that coin.
And what exactly is that flip side?
You know, I'm not a system player. I am a system. You know what I mean?
And he's sort of right in that Harden pick and roll possessions have historically produced really good results. So the theory on these possessions is sound, with George occupying a defender on one side and Kawhi spacing the floor on the other, so Harden has room to drive and attack. Of course, the beard is a little grayer now, so he doesn't have the same burst to be a one-man offense, and the concern here is that him dominating the ball turns George and Kawhi into history's most expensive spot-up shooters, and even then he still might not pass it. Leonard and PG do have solid off-ball value, both as spot-up threats and even on the move like this, so more handoffs or movement can amplify their value away from the ball while Harden creates openings. The other challenge with the Harden pick and roll game is the roll man, because the Clippers don't really have a great partner for him. Ivica Zubac isn't an elite lob threat, and this might be rust, but Harden misses him here instead of his eyes lighting up. And more importantly, they struggle when teams send two defenders to the ball handler and the bigs have to pass on the move. Zubac in particular is overtaxed as a playmaker in these short roll situations because that's not really his strength. Here he catches this and looks to pass, but there's no one in front of him on the roll. Even with all that, Harden pick and rolls that lead to 4-on-3s are still pretty good offense. But the goal of a super team isn't to create good offense, it's to create great offense. And that's the rub with the Clippers. As currently constructed, it's hard to see the pieces all adding up without trade-offs. I mean, they could use Westbrook as a screener, and he's quite dangerous on the short roll, but then they would have two non-shooters on the court, so the spacing falls apart with either Zubac or Russ off the ball, and then sometimes Westbrook is overzealous, wanting to isolate himself. If they play small with Westbrook, then there's no big man to help protect the paint on penetration. And, of course, Harden himself presents defensive problems. The Nuggets hunted him over and over down the stretch in their recent game, and nothing epitomizes a defensive vulnerability like Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan breaking the defense in a game that Denver won without its three best players. I actually think the Clippers will improve as they play together more and find offensive tactics that create and maintain more advantages. But this isn't a young team. They probably don't have a high defensive ceiling, and ultimately, there's only one basketball. And to me, that's the ultimate lesson with any super team that isn't actually all that super. 3 or 4 big scorers will make you competitive, but you can't just stack up stars and expect to be great, especially in an era where speed, decision-making, and movement are so important. Because, after all, basketball isn't played on paper. The Clippers are currently playing at a 42-win pace when accounting for factors like opponent quality and three-point shooting luck. We track that for Patreon subscribers at thinkingbasketball.net. Let me know your thoughts down below on which category of super team you think this Clippers squad will end up in. I also wrote more about adding up stars in Thinking Basketball, the book, if you're interested in that. Otherwise, thanks for watching this one, and as always, I hope you're having a great day.